Good evening, YouTube. My name is Billy, and welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight is very special because tonight makes video number 25. I started my YouTube channel just earlier this month, and I'm really excited because cooking a good home-cooked meal for my family every single night it's just a passion of mine. I love it. I grew up in a household where we had a home-cooked meal every single night, and the family sat down, and we all ate together. And I mean, you have traditions and memories that are made around the kitchen and the dinner table. And I wouldn't trade 1 minute of any of that for anything in the world. All right, tonight we're gonna make a very simple dinner, as always. We're gonna make some bow tie pasta with some meatballs, and I'm gonna show you how I make my cream mozzarella cheese sauce to go with that. Okay, to start, we're gonna get our oven preheated to 350 degrees, and we're gonna get a large pot of water. Going, and I'm just gonna salt that a little bit. Just add a little bit of salt to your water that you're gonna cook the pasta in, and you'll be great. All right, now to work our meat. Now the meat that I chose to use tonight is a pound of lamb, ground lamb. A lot of people might be a little scared of lamb, but it's really good. It is a little bit more expensive than ground meat, and it does have a little bit more fat, but the flavor is amazing. Okay, and we're just gonna season that with a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Okay, we're gonna take about a teaspoon of thyme. Teaspoon of basil. About 2 tablespoons of parsley. Okay, and then we're gonna do about a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. Just dump that right in. Now, what we're gonna do, this is a pretty small batch of meatballs. This is not gonna make very many at all. So, and meatballs are kind of like making a meatloaf. I'm gonna take 2 pieces of pretty good bread. Pretty good bread. Okay, and you could use any kind of bread that you want. That's not what's important. Okay, and I'm just gonna take those and I'm gonna lay that bread just in the oven on an open rack, and just to let those get toasted. You want them completely dry all the way through, and if they get a little dark, don't worry about that, because that toasted, the darkness brings a really good strong toasted flavor to your meatballs. It's really good. Okay. Now, while we are waiting for our bread to toast, I'm going to take 1 clove. This is a pretty large clove of garlic. We're just going to peel that. And then we're going to just mince that up pretty finely. Okay, once that's done, we're just going to scoop that up with our knife and just drop that right in the bowl. All right, and this is about half of 1 bulb of shallot. Again, we're going to peel that top layer off. Sometimes I find it easier just to snip the ends and then take off that first layer. Makes it a lot easier. You don't have to fight with the skin quite so much. Okay, and then we're just going to slice that really thinly and then mince that up. If you have a food processor, you could definitely run these through quickly. I do have one. It's really small, so I'm not going to get it out. I keep talking about how small my food processor is. I really need to get a bigger one and a bigger cutting board. Those are my 2 Christmas wish gifts. That's what I want. I think I'm getting a bigger food processor. I may have to do the larger cutting board on my own, but that's okay. I'm pretty picky about those, so I don't mind. Okay, now we're just going to get a spoon, or I'm just going to use my hands, and I'm just going to work that in there. And you want to work that all the way in. So it's all the way through. Everything is perfectly incorporated. And you really want to, you can use your fingers and just really kind of pinch it and squish it in there. That way you know all of your flavors are consistently throughout the whole mixture of meat. All right, I'm also gonna add an egg to that. Okay, the key to not getting eggshell in the food that you're making, take your egg on the side of the bowl, go down 1 firm time, and then pull it open and drop it in. When you do that, you don't have to worry about eggshell getting into your whatever it is you're making. Now, when you sit there and you just slightly tap, 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 that's when you you're just causing all kinds of little cracks and whatnot. And that's when you get the eggshell in your food. And I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not what we want. Okay. Now I am going to wash my hands, and we're going to just let that sit there, kind of soak up all of that for a minute. And after I wash my hands, I will show you how we're going to start the sauce. Okay, so we're gonna go over here to the stove, and I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to do the best I can. Okay, well, let's try that again. In this medium-size sauce pan, I have 1 stick of salted butter, and then I have 1 block of cream cheese. And we're gonna go ahead and turn that to medium heat, and you wanna start letting that melt down. This recipe is actually very similar to the sour cream sauce that I make in my enchiladas. And there is a sour cream chicken enchilada video that I made if you're interested in seeing how I do that. I'm going to get 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. And we're going to dump that right into the saucepan with the butter and the cream cheese. And then we're going to do 1 can of water. Okay, we're going to wait for a minute until that gets hot. Okay, we're going to wait just a minute for that to start getting hot, and then we'll start to stir it up. You can use a whisk, or I'm probably going to use something else because the cream cheese will be pretty thick in the beginning. Go ahead and start breaking up the mushroom soup, and the butter and the cream cheese will take a minute to thicken up. And then once that's all heated up and that's blended well, I'm going to add a couple of cups of mozzarella cheese, and you could use other types of cheese. That's just what I'm using tonight. Okay, now once our sauce is starting to heat up a little bit, you're going to start stirring that. You can use a whisk or a fork or whatever you have handy, and you want to stir that up pretty well because you don't want to have the little chunks of the cream cheese that aren't completely dissolved yet. You really want to have really nice creamy sauce. And I'm just going to heat this, but I'm not going to allow it to boil. You don't want that. You want to really just heat it up until it's a really nice thick and creamy sauce. You just make sure you don't see any, and drag your whisk or whatever you're using across the edges and then across the bottom. Okay. All right, and also our water is starting to boil, so we're gonna go ahead and dump in our pasta. And I'm just gonna stir that a little bit, just so it doesn't stick. Okay, now I'm smelling our toast, our bread, and I just want to take a quick peek at that, and it looks like it's pretty done. Just be really careful. Toss that over. Do the other one. Okay, that was pretty hot. Okay, now once your bread is completely toasted all the way through, you're just gonna use your knife, or you can just use your hands, whichever you like. Now this is a small amount of meat that I'm working with, so I'm gonna cut these up pretty fine. You can make homemade croutons like this as well. Just baste them, you know, melt some butter with a little bit of salt, pepper, garlic, and onions. And just kind of use a basting brush. Let them toast like that. And then just cut them up into crouton-sized pieces, and you're ready to go. All right, now, I may not use all of that, but so I'm gonna start, I'm gonna take one, and then I'm gonna start mixing that up. Yeah, I am gonna use all of that. So we're just gonna dump that all right in the bowl. Even the little powdered bits, and we're just gonna work that in. That bread's gonna soften right back up, but it's gonna help hold your meatballs together a little bit easier, and it gives it a really nice little toasty bite to it. Okay, now while I'm getting that the way I want it, I have a cast iron skillet. Okay, and I'm going to turn that to medium heat. Now, earlier today, when I was making my cheese logs, I had some bacon. I made some bacon, and I also added a little bit of shallot and garlic in that skillet. So I'm not even going to wash that skillet. I'm going to just use that bacon grease and the garlic and shallot. That's the one really nice thing about having cast iron skillet. You get some really amazing flavors. Okay, and I'm just going to get a plate. Make sure that's exactly the way I want it. And you just want to make sure everything is completely incorporated all the way through. That way every single meatball has a very consistent flavor. And then we're going to take that and just roll those up into whatever size meatballs you want. That's about a golf ball. That's good. My grandmother used to say, if the food is not messy, it's not good. That reminds me of a time we went and had a chili dog at Sam's Club. It was the messiest thing we've ever eaten. But that was a good memory. Good memories. That's where I learned my passion for cooking. My grandmother's name was Gloria Thomas, and she was one of the sweetest little people to ever grace this earth. Okay. Alright, and that last one's kind of big, but that's alright. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could probably actually get quite a few more if you made smaller ones. I'm going to wash my hands really quick. Alright, I'm going to move the meatballs a little bit closer to my skillet. It's not quite ready, but that's okay. Give our noodles a little toss. Okay, now, my sauce is plenty hot, and it's the desired consistency and everything is really nice and smooth. So I'm going to give that a final little whisk, and I'm going to take 2 cups, about 2 cups, of mozzarella cheese. And just dump that right in there. We'll call that 1 cup. And you want to mix that in slowly, not all at once. Let that cheese have a chance to really melt. I really like using mozzarella in my cheese sauces because it melts really well, and it's just a really creamy, good flavor. Don't forget to scrape the sides of your pan so your sauce is really nice and smooth. I don't think I dumped in enough pasta, but that'll be fine. We'll fix that. Alright, we're going to stir that. And if you find that your sauce gets a little too thick, you could cut that down with a little bit of chicken broth or just a little bit of water or even milk. Okay, now our skillet is getting nice and hot now. So I am going to take our tongs And we're just gonna drop our little meatballs right in there, right in the skillet. And we're just gonna brown those on all sides until those are completely done all the way through. And then you're just gonna take them up and let them rest for just a minute. I'm gonna go back to our sauce here. Because it's starting to bubble. It can bubble a little bit. You just don't want to bring it to a really, you don't want to let it come to a complete boil. In fact, I'm going to turn that heat way down. Now, a lot of people say that cooking on the gas is a lot easier. Your heat is a lot more consistent and easier to control, but I've been cooking on electric my whole life, so I don't really know the difference. Alright, so that was the second cup. Not only that, doing the cheese in smaller handfuls at a time, dropping the cold cheese down into the mixture will help bring that temperature down some, so you don't, so it doesn't boil and get funky. All right, we're just gonna keep a watch on that. We're gonna keep stirring that. We want that really thin, where it's a really good sauce. And that is actually getting a little thick. But that's okay. Give our noodles a little sauce. Alright, and while that's going, I'm gonna get my drainer out. Little bit of kitchen safety. Never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, put a sharp knife down in dishwater. Never. Bad, bad, bad cuts have happened that way. Not to me, but I've treated quite a few. Alright, that is exactly the way I want it. So I'm going to leave that alone for a second. Okay, now once our meatballs are done, we're just going to take those up and just put those on a paper towel to drain. Now you do not have to cook your meatballs in the bacon grease like I did. You could just as easily pop those in the oven for about 350 to 375 for about 30 to 45 minutes if you do not want to cook them on the in a skillet, and that would work just as well. Okay, our sauce is done. We're gonna turn that off. It is starting to bubble a little bit, and that's okay, but you just don't want it to boil. And that's really thinned down a little bit. And that's nice and creamy. And I've already done a little taste test, so I know it's perfect. Just light and creamy. If you want a little bit more of a salty flavor to your sauce, you could definitely add some Parmesan cheese to that. I didn't. I try to stay away from too much salt when I can. Okay, and our pasta's done too. So we're going to go ahead and just toss our pasta in the drainer. And I toss that up just to get some of the excess water off of it. I really like to drain my pasta well. Otherwise it tends to make whatever sauce you have, it just thins it down too much. And then you lose a lot of those good flavors you work so hard to get. Now what I like to do to keep my pasta warm and from sticking together until everyone's ready to eat. I know a lot of people might, rinse some cool water or whatever, but I just take a lid, and the lid that came off the pot that I cooked up, and I just put that right over the top. Not only that, so if you're waiting for someone to get home, like I am, it stays warm and it stays moist, so it doesn't stick together and become a horrible pile of goo. So we're gonna leave that, and the meatballs are cooling and the sauce is done. So for right now, that's all I can do.